Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're going to be doing a special kind of video. It's going to be like a review roundup type of video for a bunch of movies that I've seen recently and a bunch of movies that you guys have recommended me to see. And I decided to put them all in one video and give you guys some reviews and recommendations for maybe some films that you're going to check out. But before we dive into these reviews, if you are a fan of movie reviews, 4K Blu-ray reviews, some tech and game reviews along the way, and now we do podcasts, if you're into all of that, then this is the channel for you, and nothing helps this channel out more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel.
For a rookie,
yes,
who's never set foot on an NBA court.
that's the literal definition of rookie, yeah.
So first up is going to be Air. I did a short on this when it first came out, but this movie has stuck with me ever since I saw it, and I thought it deserves a little bit of a longer review because I think more people should be checking this one out. So this movie is directed by Ben Affleck, that stars him, Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, and somebody who you haven't seen in a while, Chris Tucker, in an amazing performance. And this movie tells the story of how the Air Jordan came to be. It's not about Michael Jordan. Actually, Michael Jordan doesn't even appear in this film. You see the back of his head. I think he has a line, but really it's mostly about the creation of the Air Jordan. This is very much a Matt Damon-centered story. He plays Sonny Vaccaro. He's like a big shot over at Nike. The Nike's basketball division of shoes is just falling apart. They're third or fourth in the game. Adidas and Converse are way ahead of them. They're basically going to close down the shoe division for basketball if they don't figure something out. You know, they give them, like, I think they said $250,000 a year, and that's it. And at the time, Nike was still a big corporation. They already had some of the best tennis shoes on the market, but they weren't a basketball shoe market yet. And that's where Michael Jordan comes in. Sonny Vaccaro has a gut feeling that Michael Jordan is going to be the star they could build their shoe brand around. And that's what this movie's about. It's about nailing down Michael Jordan so they can create the Air Jordan. They have to do that by not communicating with Michael Jordan, but communicating with his agent, and his mother, played amazingly by Viola Davis. Michael Jordan's only request was that they get Viola Davis to play his mother. And you see why, because Viola Davis is one of the greatest actresses of all time. She never phones in her performance, and she gives a world-class performance here in a series of world-class performances in this film, because not only is Ben Affleck great as Phil Knight, he's hysterical on that. Jason Bateman and Chris Tucker are both hysterical. I didn't expect to laugh so hard at this movie. This movie was just one of the funniest movies I've seen in theaters in a while, and they're just regular jokes. These kinds of movies we don't get anymore. These kind of like these sports dramas with like big epic monologues in here, which can seem a little bit schmaltzy at times. I understand that, but these are films we used to get all the time in the 90s and 2000s, and we just don't get them anymore. And you can see that Ben Affleck loves to make these types of movies. The only problem I kind of had with this movie is that putting Nike as the underdog, and it's kind of hard to see Nike as the underdog, especially coming from it with 2023 eyes. And even at the time, it's not like Nike was, you know, like they're trying to portray it as this like small company. They were not a small company. They just weren't big in the basketball shoe market. They weren't what Air Jordans would be and would raise Nike to be. So it can be a little bit off-putting to see them kind of casting another corporation as the underdog up against other corporations. And that's the only thing that would kind of take me out of it just a little bit, but that's not to say that for 2023, Air is the best film that I have seen. I gave this originally an 8.5, but it sat with me so much. I had so much fun watching it. Again, the laughs in here were just so surprising. The great performances. The soundtrack is incredible. If you're a fan of 80s pop music like I am, you're gonna be in heaven with this. When you hear Squeeze's Tempted, or Big Country, if you haven't heard those songs in a while, you are just gonna be in heaven. These things, the needle drops in this movie, it's just an all-around great film. You know, this movie was made by Amazon, so it should be on Amazon Prime pretty soon. It's not doing too great in theaters, and that's kind of to be expected for a movie like this. You know, that's just what 2023 is. Unfortunately, the movies that people are going to theaters to see are movies like the Super Mario Brothers movies you could see as a family. These small dramas just don't get the attention in theaters, and that's why I understand Amazon picking up the bill for this. It'll be a great movie to watch at home on Prime. I would like more people to see in theaters, but I completely understand if you want to just wait till it comes out on Prime and enjoy it there. It's definitely worth your time. I'm actually going to raise my score on this from an 8.5 to a 9.5. This movie is fantastic. I highly recommend you guys check this one out.
Enough life on Earth to fill 50 planets. Be prepared for anything.
Next up on our list is K-Pax. This movie was recommended to me by Kevin L. You've probably seen him if you watch Let's Talk Physical Media. He asks us a bunch of questions each week, and he said that this is one of his favorite, most underrated films that really nobody ever talks about, and I had never heard of this movie before. This movie came out back in 2001. It's directed by Lane Softly. It stars Kevin Spacey and Jeff Bridges giving world-class performance. It follows Kevin Spacey's character. He just kind of randomly shows up in New York City. He claims to be an alien from another planet, a planet called K-Pax, and he gets put into, I guess, a psych ward at a hospital pretty much, where Jeff Bridges becomes his doctor, and he's trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And as the movie is progressing, it's becoming more and more likely to Jeff Bridges that what Kevin Spacey is saying is true, that he doesn't have a mental disorder, that what he actually is really an alien from another planet. And this movie, its plot might not be the greatest plot, but the story is incredible. And this movie is so philosophical, just looking at what it's like to be a human being, looking at it from an alien's perspective, how somebody from another planet would look at human beings and what our flaws are as human beings. Like, whenever a movie tackles subjects like that, just any kind of philosophical subject, I love that, because I am just fascinated with the human condition as it is and just what makes us all tick, and just coming at it from this angle, I thought it was perfect. Now, the film itself isn't the greatest film I have ever seen, and it could fall to that melodrama category. You know, it can be a little bit schmaltzy and get on and make you feel emotional. You might feel like you're being manipulated, but I was perfectly fine with that. I love those kinds of movies as well. I don't care. I like to know that there is good in the world. Like, I don't always need to see movies where, you know, it's going to depress me and make me feel sad. This movie, at the very end of the day, it made me feel good. It made me feel hopeful. Jeff Bridges and Kevin Spacey. I know Kevin Spacey is persona non grata right now, but he still gives an amazing performance in this. I have to separate the art from the artist, because he really does turn in an incredible performance, and so does Jeff Bridges. It's really about the two of them and their push and pull and their character development, and you could just see that they're not phoning it in. They would carry this movie. You know, it has kind of a twist ending. I don't want to spoil it. It didn't really surprise me. It might surprise you, but I kind of expected where they were going, and that's exactly where they ended up. It didn't hurt this film at all, in my opinion. I still think this is a really good movie. I think the reason why this movie is forgotten and never was a hit to begin with is because of the atrocious name of K-Pax. It does make sense in the context of the film, but you or anybody isn't going to know what that means just passing by. It doesn't look like the name of a film, that's for damn sure. So I really think that would really hurt them in the marketing department, is I think they should have found a better way to name this movie. I don't know why more people don't know about this. This movie does not have a Blu-ray release. The last release, I think, was DVD, and it's not even streaming anywhere. I actually had to rent this off of Amazon Prime for $3.99, and you know what? That was $3.99 well spent. I think this is a fantastic film. If you haven't checked this one out, I can highly recommend this. If I was going to give this one a score out of 10, I'm still going to give this one a really solid 8.5 out of 10.
2 deaths, and they're connected, and that's all I know.
That's all I want to know. Kevin!
Next up on the list, this was a recommendation from Lord Raiden, and he wanted us to talk about 1996's City Hall. This one stars Al Pacino and John Cusack, Bridget Fonda, Danny Aiello, and it's directed by Harold Becker. And actually, one of the writers on this movie is Paul Schrader, and actually you can see his fingerprints a little bit in the script of this movie as well. And this movie is talking about corruption in New York City. Al Pacino plays a mayor. His deputy mayor is John Cusack. And in the very beginning of this movie, unfortunately, a shooting happens that involves a cop, a drug dealer, but unfortunately a 6-year-old kid ends up dying, and this ends up setting off the plot of this movie, which revolves around corruption all the way up to the top of City Hall.
All the food groups are represented?
And back in the 90s, we had plenty of movies that were dealing with corruption. Actually, I just reviewed Serpico, which is about the corruption in the New York City Police Department. This is just dealing with the fact that it goes way higher than that. It goes all the way up to the top. It goes all the way to the mayor. And it's just trying to show, because John Cusack plays this deputy mayor who has the heart of a lion. He just wants to do good. Even though he's really into politics and he doesn't mind playing the political game, for him, he believes it's all for the right thing. He doesn't believe that there could possibly, because he comes from Louisiana. John Cusack, that's one thing in this movie I have to point out right off the top. He does an atrocious Louisiana accent. He goes in and out of this accent throughout the movie. I have no idea why they needed to put that in there. You could have took out that whole Louisiana subplot in there. It's brought up a couple times, but it really could have been completely taken out. That was just poor writing and just a poor decision to even let John Cusack try that accent. Now, I've told you guys before, I'm not the biggest John Cusack fan as it is. I've never really enjoyed his work. There's a few movies, there's a few exceptions in there, obviously, but for the most part, there's just something about him that just rubs me the wrong way as far as his acting style goes. It always just feels very, like, jittery and unfocused. It's just not for me, so I never really enjoy his performances. He does a pretty good job in this. I'm not going to take that away from it. Al Pacino, he's just kind of being 90s Al Pacino. It doesn't really feel like he had to turn it up or put in an amazing performance. There's a scene here where he gives this huge monologue at that kid's funeral, and it went on way too long. I mean, way too long. And there's a couple scenes in this movie where things go way too long that could have been cut down, paced a little bit better, because for the most part it's paced pretty well, but there are some scenes where I just feel like they didn't know how to get out of it, and they were kind of stuck, and it just kind of drags on. And that happens, I think, a lot through this movie. And this movie came out in the 90s, and the reason why I think this movie's forgotten, because it was a box office bomb. It cost $40 million to make this movie, and it only made $33 million, is that there was just a bunch of these types of movies coming out in the 90s. Like, this is very similar to a movie in 1997 called Copland, which I think is a way better film. And just how many movies in the 90s were we dealing with New York City and corruption, and even into the early 2000s, it's just, this one just kind of feels like a regular person in a crowd. It's just nothing too special here. Actually, it's funny, with this movie, there's a scene in here where they're talking about Pix 11. I live in New York, and Pix 11 is a real network in New York at the time in the 90s. Actually, they used to play a lot of Saturday afternoon movies. This is the kind of Saturday afternoon movie you check out. There's no harm, no foul. It's not the greatest film. It's not the worst film. It's just something that's kind of like generic. I would say that this is like your typical 3-star film. It's never trying to be more than what it is. It's enjoyable, but there's nothing special. Nothing in here that's going to make it feel big or epic or something that's going to be remembered. And I think that's why most people don't remember this movie. I think if Lord Radiant didn't bring up City Hall, I had completely forgotten about this movie. I was watching it and I was like, oh shit, yeah, I remember Bridget Fonda in this, because it's so different from her performance that she would do a year later in Jackie Brown. I was like, you know what, Bridget Fonda does have a little bit of range, because she is good in this movie. It's just like I said, everybody is good, but nobody is great. Nothing about this movie is great. The cinematography is kind of bland. It's just nothing special here. It's something that you could definitely watch on a Saturday afternoon and not feel like you got your time wasted. So I could recommend this movie, but go into it with tapered expectations. I would probably still give this like a 6.5 out of 10. Enjoyable, just not special.
I'm swimming home.
You're swimming home?
I figured out there's a river of pools all the way to my house.
And then the last movie we're going to be reviewing today is 1968's The Swimmer, starring Burt Lancaster. And this film was directed by Frank Perry, and it was written by Eleanor Perry. And Burt Lancaster is one of the greatest actors of all time. And for some reason, I had never heard of this movie before. I was actually just looking at a random list of the top 15 films from the 1960s. They put this at number 8. I'm always looking up lists and lists for recommendations of movies, and I've read plenty of lists about the greatest films from the 1960s, and for some reason, The Swimmer seems to not get brought up that much. But when I read the synopsis for this movie, it fascinated me. It tells a story about a man who decides that he is going to make like a river of his neighbor's pools to get back to his house, because it somehow makes a perfect path back to his house across the county. Now, when I read that, that's all I read about the movie. I had known nothing else really going in other than the fact that this movie deals with mental health. And I thought that was fascinating, because in the 1960s, that's probably a subject matter that was very taboo for films. I can't think of too many films from the 1960s that dealt with mental health. So I was fascinated. I am always fascinated by films that deal with mental health. I think it's a subject that even in 2023 we have a hard time talking about. I think we all suffer from a little bit of anxiety and depression, and it's hard to deal with. And when you can see other people dealing with that on film, it does actually help to be more relatable. So I was very fascinated to see what this movie was about. And yes, it does deal with mental health, but it's really dealing more about a man's mental breakdown. Because this movie starts out, he's at his friend's house. He's a big shot, you know, he's got all these rich friends. They all live in this big northeast town, and he seems like he's the life of the party. He's the happiest, he's the most fit, because he's an older man, but he's got this great ripped body, and he's just talking with all his friends, and they're like, how do you do it? And he just seems like the life of the party. And he tells them, well, you know, I'm gonna swim in this pool, then I'm gonna go to that neighbor's pool, swim in their pool. He just wants to swim basically a lap in each pool. That's basically the goal he's going for here. You know, it's just like something that he has to do. He wants to accomplish something. And really the reason he wants to accomplish this is because he's going through this breakdown, and as the movie is going on, each house he gets to, we get to peel back more and more layers of what is causing this, what is going on in his life. And I'm not going to spoil any of that for you guys, because I thought this movie was absolutely incredible. It's a movie you should check out. The premise alone is very interesting, but they really do use that premise to the highest degree. It's really unbelievable what they were able to do with this film. It could be a little bit dreamlike, a little bit nightmarish, you know, it just feels like very hazy in this movie. Like you really get locked in, and the cinematography, it does feel like a summer day in the Northeast. Like I said earlier, I'm from New York, and they just captured that perfectly. And for a 1968 film, it really should be commended. I really feel like more people should see this movie. You know, you will not be bored. I promise you that. You'll be locked in, you'll be enjoying yourself, and it'll make you think, which I think is one of the greatest achievements that a film could possibly do. One that's going to stick with you for days after. I watched this, I think, on Saturday. I'm recording this on a Monday, so it's been 2 days. I haven't gotten this out of my head yet. It's just that damn good. I really think it's an amazing movie. And also, you can grab this Blu-ray, since we do Blu-ray reviews and 4K reviews here on the channel. This is from Grindhouse Releasing. I've never heard of them before. This is the first movie I ever got from them. And I looked it up and I was like, wow, that seems like a really nice set. And it got a great slipcover on it. Beautiful design. This is kind of like a raised design here. You pop it open, you get the same artwork underneath. All your stats on the back. This looks just like it. But look at that. You get like almost like that Criterion clear case. You pop it open, and right here, guys, I know I made this joke on Let's Talk Physical Media, but we got the future right here. Compact disc, CD. Now this is what all the kids are going to be raving about in the future, I'm telling you. Yeah, you know, they get the whole soundtrack of the film, which is really good in there as well. But what we get here is individual disc design. That's a Blu-ray and a DVD. It is a new 4K scan, it says, and this came out in 2021. And if you look, reversible art. So this actually has things that we appreciate from like Shout and Scream Factory or Arrow Video sometimes. Reversible art. We ask for this all the time. And a little boutique label like this, look what they did. They gave us the works. They got individual disc design, everything. Amazing job. This booklet, which really is leaning into that 60s, like, you know, almost like acid trip design. I think they did a phenomenal job. All of this just looks really fantastic. You get some amazing extras on there. They kind of separated all the extras in the featurettes that could have been easily edited into a documentary, in my opinion. But you know what? The featurettes are really good. You get interviews with people who are still alive. You know, obviously Burt Lancaster since passed away, so is the director. So you get the first assistant and the second assistant director talking about their time on the set. You know, fascinating. This was like 28 bucks I bought it for. I think it's a steal at that price. You know, obviously, it doesn't seem like this is the kind of company that's going to put out a 4K of this, and this movie still looked fantastic. It's a fantastic Blu-ray. Most of this movie takes place on a hot, sunny day, so it looks great. The grass is green. It's going to pop off your screen. So if you do want to check this out, I can highly recommend checking it out through this Blu-ray. But if not, check it out any which way you can. Actually, check out most of these films any which way you can, because they're all pretty damn good. You know, City Hall, it's on HBO Max, so if you have HBO Max, you can check that one out on there for free. Well, you know, you have to pay for the HBO Max. And on a Saturday afternoon, definitely grab that one. Air, I think you should check out and see that one in theaters if you can. If not, wait for it to come to Amazon Prime. K-Pax, you're going to have to pony up the $3.99 for it from Apple or Amazon Prime, because it doesn't look like it's streaming anywhere, and I feel like this is one that got lost to time, and I don't think we're going to get it anytime soon on Blu-ray or anywhere free to stream. So if you want to check that one out, $3.99 is probably what it's going to be, and it's definitely worth that. And this one's the same thing. You're going to have to pay $3.99 or get this Blu-ray, and I highly, highly recommend this Blu-ray. Now, I know nothing about this company other than this Blu-ray, so I don't know if there will be a sale or not at some point. I actually bought this through Amazon, so I didn't even buy it from them directly, and yeah, I'm very happy with this purchase. I think you guys will be too, but just know what the movie is going in. I think you'll appreciate it, and I would give this one a really solid 9.5 out of 10 as well. It's almost a perfect film. I'm only taking a half a point off because there are some points in this movie, you know, where they kind of drag a little tiny bit. And anyway, guys, I hope you like this structure for this review format. I'm thinking about doing this every few weeks when we need another video and a bunch of movies you guys recommend to me, or movies that I see in theaters and make a short for that I'm not able to make a full video for. I think that this is the kind of format I want to do more often, give a movie like 5 or 6 minutes each, because, you know, a short is cool. I like doing them. Matt likes to do them, but I feel like it's sometimes really hard to fit a whole movie review in the 1 minute. You know, it's kind of just like the Roger Ebert thumbs up, thumbs down. I think there's a little bit more to reviewing film than that. You know, a movie can be bad and still get something out of it, and this reverse of that. A movie can be good and have some bad stuff in there. And I think a viewer of that film should be aware of that going in if they're into film criticism. If you're not and you just want to go see a movie completely blind, I understand that completely also. I don't watch trailers for that very reason. I like to go into a movie knowing as little as I can and letting the movie wash over me and let me unravel it on my own. But everybody is different. After the movie, I like to also still go back and watch other people's reviews and see what they thought of a movie. I think that's fascinating. I have always been fascinated with the fact that all of us have different opinions of movies. We can watch the same thing and get something completely different out of it. That doesn't make me right or make you right or make you wrong and me wrong. It just means that we came at it from a different angle from our own perspectives. You know, we all live life differently, and It's amazing when we can get to the same perspective and live on the opposite sides of the world. That's one of the greatest things I have always found with film and film criticism in general. I think it's one of the greatest art forms. I think film is the greatest art form. I will always talk about movies with anyone who's willing to listen or is willing to talk to me. So if you guys want to talk some movies in the comment section below, we can always do that. So leave those comments down there, and while you're down there, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then just simply go into your local eateries or whatever and telling all of your friends about us. And we'll be seeing you around.